Welcome to the very first Conversation Roundtable, a community of folks designed to discuss the important topics in the cosplay and nerd communities right now. We are from all different walks of life, and we represent very many fandoms and other hobbies within the hobby, and we are delighted to be having this conversation this evening. I am your host, Trixie, she, her. I'm 31. I am bi. I've been cosplaying for about 6 years seriously and been going to conventions since 2008. And I mostly attend anime and gaming conventions because that's where I live.
I'm not Jared. Based out of Washington, D.C. I am 33 years old. I'm heterosexual. I have been attending cons for the last 10 years. I kind of started it just because it's cons. I love that type of stuff. I'm ultimately now attending more from a media press standpoint, and I do photography as well there. So very happy to be here today.
I guess I'll go.
Go ahead, Alex.
It would be you. It would be you, Alex.
Hello. So my name is Alex Abdulayev. I live in Baltimore. Pronouns are he, him, his. I'm 40 years old, and I actually have only been doing conventions, well, consistently for the past 5 years. But that actually goes back way further to like when I was 19. Long story short. Anyway, I kind of fill a bunch of different roles at conventions. I work at a convention that's sort of like native to Baltimore, DC. I do panels. I'm a photographer, and I also occasionally do this for funsies. So, yay.
All right.
Hey, Alex.
All right. Next up.
Hi, my name is Makaya. I am 26 years old. I live in the Michigan area. I've been going to cons since I was 18, so it was back in 2012, my first con I went to.
Baby.
Yeah, I know, I am a baby. I'm a trans man, he, him pronouns. I mostly do a lot of cosplay, but I've also dipped my toe in doing paneling. I've also volunteered for staff on cons. Yeah. I mostly go to anime cons, but I've also been to a couple gaming cons too.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nikki.
Hi, so I'm Nikki. My user handle is Nikki Muffin. She, her. I'm 26, local to the New York area. So most of the cons I go to is Comic-Con, gaming cons, and anime conventions. I'm a cosplayer. I also do occasional party hosting. So whenever I get invited, I'll host. If they ask, and crafting and streaming. So yeah, that's kind of my area.
Great. All right, next.
I'm Veronique Emma Hublot, age 35. I am a trans woman, cartoonist, drag queen, YouTuber, all those kinds of things in the Pacific Northwest of Canada. My con-going experiences over I'm an adult, I've been around a long time, so I'm sure I've been going to cons for 20 years or something. But my actual presence at conventions has been very sporadic, but I do have a lot of experience in the comic book industry press and covering issues related to conventions, their managing and their handling that way. So I'm more of a distance observer, reporting on these kinds of things, blow by blow after the fact. But a large part of my background when it comes to conventions and things is more like local pride and LBGT events, more so than kind of like nerd culture. But I think
That's part of our culture too.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Johnny.
Okay. Hi. I'm Johnny. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am 26. I am local to the DC, DMV area. Najir and I actually met last year.
Yeah.
BlurredCon was supposed to be this weekend, but COVID.
Oh. So sad.
Real tears.
Yeah, the conventions so I started going to cons in 2015. I think my first con was 2015 Wizard World Philly. But now I cosplay and I also just do random stuff on the side. Types of cons. I usually try to go to Comic Cons, but it turns out that I attend more anime cons in the past year. So there's that happened. But I usually just go where my friends are. So yeah.
All right. Okay, next up.
Hi, I'm Erika Garami. I've been attending cons since Anime Expo 1999, so I've been doing this for like almost 20 years. I cosplay, I do press at conventions, I run a media blog doing conventions. I lived in Boston for a while. Now I'm here in Orange County, California, West Coast, and won a couple awards as a cosplayer. I used to do a lot of cosplay contests back in the day. And yeah, I'm so glad to be a part of this group.
Awesome. All right, Mom.
Hi, my name is Eileen. I am 46 years old, and I am Mom the cosplayer, and a lot of people in New York know. I am a admin Moms of Cosplay, and I am part of the New York Avengers charity group. I've done panels for positivity, and I'm mostly, anime, but I do DC and Marvel and video game cosplay. I've been doing this for about 5-6 years, and I'm a native New Yorker.
Awesome. Well, that's our team for today. Our first topic will be a little bit familiar because we all started to talk about conventions. We want to talk about our favorite conventions and a quick reason why they're our favorite. Because we miss them right now. There are so many conventions that should be happening, and yet COVID. So let's get started. Who wants to start off with their favorite convention?
I'll start off. So my favorite convention.
Oh, me?
Oh, you want to go? All right.
We were so excited. We were like,
everyone's like, a con, we could go.
I know, right?
All right. A little paddle, one available somewhere.
All right, Ari, go ahead.
Yes, my favorite convention, I actually have a tie between two of them. One of those is Anime Boston, because I like how they have different themes every year. So like one year it's like an idol theme. So like the convention's decorated like a concert hall, and another year is like magical school. So the convention center, they try to make it look like this magical school, and they have all these interactive events. So it's never the same experience twice. So I like the theming of that. I'm also a huge theme park fan, so theming is a yay for me. And speaking of theme parks, my other favorite convention is D23 Expo, which is the ultimate Disney fan experience. And I've been attending for a couple of years now. And I just like being around like Disney stuff. It's just my favorite things.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. All right.
That's cool. That's
cool.
I think Mom was going to go now.
Yeah, I was like, Mom's excited.
Please. You're bursting at the seams here.
I know. No, I'm sure. I don't know how everybody else feels, but KatsuCon is my utmost favorite. I think it's just this amazingly huge con that's not too overcrowded like some other cons that we do like going to, and it's a beautiful area to take great photo shoots, to meet people from so many places, and I'm always so surprised at how many people you can meet up with from not just that area, from Washington D.C. and coming up from Baltimore and Philly, but New York as well, and Florida, and like people from everywhere come up. And I don't meet up with as many friends and people who are long distance than at KatsuCon. I think it's just a great, very friendly area, to great food everywhere you go. It's just beautiful. I really love it.
Gotta love that Inner Harbor.
Yeah.
Connie, do you have a favorite con?
Yeah. I'm thinking there's plenty of, but the one that I think of right now is probably Momocon.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the first time that I actually been like to Georgia, to Atlanta, and it was just very chill environment. And even though it was really hot, it was like May in Atlanta, so it was really sweaty and hot, but people were congregating afterwards, just like sitting outside, just talking, picnicking out in front. And yeah, there's just feel pretty, it just feels like the camaraderie between, like, among all the cosplayers and just people from all over the country. So I really enjoy.
Yeah,
it.
that's great.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
Micaiah, would you like to go?
Well, I'm a little biased because I am from the Michigan area, and my first convention ever was Momocon. So
I knew
I
it.
really love Momocon. I love the energy. I love being in Detroit. I think it's such a nice area. I love being right by the water there. I love I also really like the convenience of going on the People Mover, being able to go to the different areas, like to the hotels. And I think I just like the area itself and just like the energy. I think it's really fun. And again, maybe I'm biased because I'm from Michigan, but
That's okay to be biased if that's the reason. Then there
Maybe
you
a little
go.
favorites.
Yeah. Nikki, how about yours?
So mine, I would also say Katsucon, similar to Mom, because like the first time that I went to was, I think, 3 years ago, maybe, because like again, like I feel like being in New York and like being like I've been cosplaying for like 10 years, around 10 years, which is like around high school, college, where you don't really have money to travel unless somebody gives you money to go places. And then parents yell at you to be like, no, we can't go far away. So my con experience is a little limited. And as of like until like recently, like 3 years ago, when I can start traveling to places and have my own stuff. But Katsucon definitely one of my favorites. Beautiful area. It's just really fun to hang out. To me, it feels like more of like a hangout, get together, kind of like meet people experience versus like other cons that I would say. So it has a very special atmosphere. Another one of my favorites, they're kind of recent. They're in New York, called Anime NYC. They're sponsored and created by Crunchyroll. Not sponsored this, but I know that it was their attempt to like make an anime specific convention, and to me, I think they run it pretty well. I always feel like they do a really good job at organizing it and having everyone kind of like communicate and hang out. It's like we're in a similar building as some other conventions that run, but I feel like they manage the space really, really well. So I highly recommend if you really like anime or just kind of like discover new anime. Really good place, really well handled.
Great.
And lastly, there was one called Anime Next, but that was until they moved it to Atlantic City, because the one that was one of my first conventions that I went to was Anime Next before they got really big. But those previous locations were just so good, and just I feel like the energy was a little different. So it's not on the list anymore. Now it's just Katsucon and Anime NYC.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's see. Does anybody else have any favorite conventions they want to honor?
Oh, for sure. I mean, how do we not talk about San Diego Comic-Con and the San Diego Comic-Con week? If you've never done it, it's amazing. It's amazing. Because it's just, the reason why San Diego is so special is because it takes over the entire city. So, you know, even if you can't afford to go actually inside the con, you could be walking down the street and running a Henry Cavill at ease. And this happened to me because it's just literally wherever you go, it's just something going on involving the con. So it's a really good time, which means that it has a lot for adults, it has a lot for teenagers, it has a lot for kids, and the spacing's good because it takes over the entire city. So, and it's just life-changing once you go. I mean, I looking back, because again, it's this week and some of my flashbacks are coming up, and it's just kind of bittersweet. But like Johnny said too, I have to mention BlurCon, because it's the con that really does speak to me. It's one of the first cons I can say I can 100% feel naturally be myself there, and I think they did a good job in doing so. And you know, although BlurCon it's for Blur, you know, Black nerds, how that word came about. It's for everybody, but nonetheless, it is a safe spot that I can actually go and say, like, I can 100% be myself without being like, oh, why is that person there? Or why do I care about this? Or like, you're a nerd, you know, all that type of stuff. So, but I definitely have to give a shout out. Like, July's pretty crazy when I think about it. Two of my favorite cons are in the same month. So, But
yeah, but it's interesting that you bring up the safety, because I think that that's something that not everybody thinks about when they're going to a convention, you know. Any other cons that we want to honor before we move on to our next exciting topic, Alex?
Oh yeah, I also I'm gonna go kind of against the grain on this one. So I hate people and crowds, and the fact that you guys got me to be here is kind of like a miracle. But so one of my favorite conventions is actually this really small joint that's run by two friends of mine, Mark and Alex Thomas, and it's called the Four State Comic Con, which takes place out in Damascus, Maryland. Which is like this really, really tiny convention. I mean, it literally fills up like the equivalent of like half of an expo hall, and not a big expo hall. But what's really cool is like they selected, like they hand select all of their guests, they hand select all of the sort of cosplay guests, all of the stars, and like it's very small, it's very intimate, and you really get a chance to like bond with your fellow nerds. You get a chance to like really spend a lot of quality time with your fellow cosplayers, with like other just people who are there to watch and to like take pictures and to just hang out and like buy swag. So I really enjoyed that convention. But like, you know, I mean, obviously like big conventions have their merits. I mean, I wouldn't be volunteering for one if I didn't feel that way. But I think smaller cons for me are kind of where it's at in terms of like
legit.
In terms of just like the essence of what a convention is.
Great. Yeah, Emma, do you have any cons?
Spoiler alert! Alice loves me. Alice loves me. So there's that.
This is confirmed.
I feel like the third wheel right here. I don't know.
No. You are the second wheel.
Actually, placement-wise.
You love it. Oh, okay. Emma, would you like to say anything about your favorite?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that San Diego is already off the table, because like I actually have gone. I went in 2006, and it was like a hugely life-changing experience. It was bonkers, and you always feel a little bit like, oh my god, he's in San Diego. You know, but like. I am an Eisner Award winner, right? Kind of collectively for the Love is Love anthology. So like that ceremony is there. I was a judge for the Prism Awards, one of their categories this year, and like Prism has a big, presence there. So like San Diego will always have like a big personal, because it does with so much with comics. I mean, it's the movie trailer. Place now. Like when I was there in 2006, it was like when they were like, "Hey, press, come watch Heroes," and it's like, "No, bitch, I have an interview to do." So it was already kind of like taking over that way, but there still is just so much, that, like, some of that programming. But the convention I want to highlight, I've never been there, so like whatever, maybe it actually sucks, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Is FlameCon, which I actually can't remember if it's in Brooklyn or Queens anymore, because I think they moved it, or they're going to move it. But
I went.
Yeah, I went last year.
No, it's so good.
Yeah,
it's so good. I loved it. It's so good. It's in Manhattan.
Manhattan, there you go.
It was so
because that's the one that either there's the most people I want to see, and obviously like the most like what I am. Between that or like Emerald City, because it's pretty close to me and tons of people are like, bitch, just hop across the board, we want to see you. But yeah, probably FlameCon, just because it's like, yeah, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle is just like a rainier, dirtier version of Vancouver, so whatever. It's like New York, honey, which is like way dirtier than Seattle, but less rainy. So like party, we're gonna swear that.
Well, that's great, though. I've heard great things about FlameCon, too. I want to really quickly name drop one of my very favorite conventions, and that is Fanime. I love Fanime because of their black and white ball. I am also a formal ball host and dance teacher at some conventions, so that's one of my passions, and whenever I go there, it's always so well organized. I love that, and I also really love the way that they take safety into consideration there. I would say their team in the black and white ball department is one of the best most safe environments that I've ever felt at a convention. And actually, moving into the next topic, we had a meeting before we knew whether or not Fanime was still going to be on this year. And we were talking about how the heck would we have a formal ball with people dancing in close proximity if we had to social distance? What are our options there? What are cons going to look like in the future? How long? The Frankenstein, right? Yeah. But you can't quick
gotta
step
save
when you're
room for
like
Jesus.
that.
Yeah.
Room for anime Jesus, yes. But so with this changing atmosphere, have you seen anything that conventions have been sharing that they're planning on doing for the future for keeping us all safe, other than moving online? You know, we're seeing a lot of that lately. Does anybody have anything they've seen that was notable?
I mean,
Jump on it.
No, I was just gonna say, I know that like a lot of cons are putting out things like saying like, okay, you know, we have hotels available, stuff like that, and a lot of people are commenting like, ooh, are you really gonna still go on? And like, I know I myself included, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I think this con's gonna go on. Like, I'm pretty like, even though there are technically cons scheduled for this year, in my mind, I know that they're not going to happen, and like, even if they are, I'm like, I don't feel safe to go. But like, I would hope that like, you know, they're probably going to enforce wearing masks and, you know, gloves and plexiglass in the dealer's room would be a really interesting thing to see implemented.
Had that already.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, stuff like that. And one concern that I really have with cons and safety and like social distancing is, I mean, and most of you have gone to really big cons, the lines are absolutely awful. I cannot imagine them doing the same thing they do at like the grocery store where they like tape little X's on the ground and you have to stand 6 feet apart. Like you're going to be lined up all the way down the street. That doesn't like, so I'm interested to see, you know, even like, you know, maybe if I don't go to any cons this year, but how they will implement that.
Well,
for sure.
Just to jump on your point, though, and I was thinking about this when I was thinking about this question. Like, let's talk about San Diego, for example, and this has nothing to do with the convention itself, and that's the thing. There's so many externalities that you can't plan, because how do you get to the convention center if you're not at a hotel next door? You're taking those cute little trolleys, and I love them. They're adorable. We have above ground transit here in Vancouver, but it's just like, people are cramming onto those dang things to even get to the convention. Yeah. So like, you know, you can talk about how, you know, congestion issues that conventions have never, ever been able to address. Hi, Javits Center, I'm talking to you. But like, the venue, you know, and then what happens in there. But it's like, there are so many like contagion vectors on the way to get there. So if everyone's funneling into those little trolleys in San Diego, you're funneling into the ding dang subways in New York. You are going to all these places with mass transit where there are tons of people crammed in, and it is just a huge factor that it's just like, I don't even know that we can start the conversation inside the conventions when modern city planning for big venues is like, you've already run the gauntlet before you even got there. Honey, maybe you got on a plane to get there.
To piggyback off of that, I think that's Emma brings up a very valid point. I mean, so one of the main issues is that like we can look at conventions right now and like, you know, like everybody's like super excited about Katsucon and everybody gets out of Katsucon. It's like, I got the con crud, right? Like, or whatever.
That was me this year.
That was like literally me. I got walking pneumonia. That was fun on a bun. But like, I mean, like we kind of like, you know, made light of it because it was February and it was still cute to call it the coronavirus or whatever.
Oh no!
Yeah,
you're right. So innocent back then.
Right. But
you're right.
But I think the point is that like if we can't get away from getting like the common cold to spread from person to person at a medium-sized convention, to say nothing of Otakon or Katsucon, like how are we going to deal with something that is like 3.5 times more virulent and deadly, like coronavirus? So I think
the call is a COVID, isn't it?
Right. Well, my thinking on that issue is like twofold. I mean, just really quickly, one thing is that we have to fundamentally kind of restructure the way conventions are done, kind of like what Emma and Micaiah have pointed out. And the other thing is like we just have to start scrapping things. Like we have to kind of like trim the fat and be like, okay, look, this is where we're gonna have to cap attendance. You know, you can come for a day. They're gonna have to eliminate any kind of like live performances, any kind of like raves, any kind of mosh pits, any kind of like swing or ballroom dances. Like that's gonna have to be off the table forever. Because you know, it's not like our government is taking care of this shit. Like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, we have to keep ourselves safe. We have to keep ourselves safe.
For sure.
Yeah, and like another thing though is like
I wouldn't say forever. I wouldn't say forever, but yeah.
At least until we have a vaccine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like there is no way of going back to normal to a degree, but everyone's con experience is different. Like you can't
I don't
just
want
be like,
gloom and doom here either.
Get in line if you want to buy things, you gotta cap that. Get in line if you want to go meet someone, you gotta cap that. It just general, it's like, how are you gonna control that? Because people don't just like, oh, I only come here to shop. Like some people do, but most like plan out their entire day that they're gonna be in a convention. And how are you gonna control what people are gonna be doing in order to provide it safely? It's just like you can't make it safe. And the least, like in the future, once like, you know, hopefully Corona tones down, we have vaccine and thing, 100% provide hand sanitizers because it's gross there. We need hand sanitizer stations everywhere, water stations, stuff like that. But you can't just think that, oh, if schools or like grocery stores have the glass windows and all of that, then we can just put the same thing and keep going with the structure that we have. It's just simply impossible. And then guests are not going to come if you're going to threaten their health.
Yeah. No,
I think the other issue is that they're also not going to come if it's too inconvenient. Because I mean, you know how America is, right? Like, I mean, you know, I speak as a Russian here, but like, you know, but I've been here long enough to know that like this country thrives on like convenience. If it's not convenient, like, well, I'm not going. I'm going to go to a different convention with like hookers and blackjack and whatever, right? But I mean, that's kind of like what we're at. It's like people are not going to want to go
something's
if you're
not convenient. I'm not doing
push them to do things.
Exactly.
Another question that I have, another question that I had with this is like, you know, some cons have trouble with ghosting people who don't buy badges or they come in and stuff like that. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but it's like, if you can't control ghosting, how are you going to control to make sure that everybody's wearing a mask, everybody's doing all this? Like, you can't even make sure that like, you like it's in doing attendance caps. How can you enforce attendance caps if like people are just showing up?
Yeah, and it's like also another balance. It's like if you're gonna cap like how many people go to a convention, you have to raise the prices. And how many people are desperate enough to actually go with all of these restrictions? Because it's a whole different con experience at that point. So is it really worth the money if you're very, very restricted in what you can actually do?
I mean, look like Disney World.
And what are cons offering too? Like, seriously, like what are they offering also their audience?
Right? For everything that Nikki said.
Background with anime conventions, it also limits the A-list Japanese guests that come in and a lot of the international guests that come in. People will like save a ton to just get an autograph and just have that chance to meet them, because I've always associated Anime Expo and to a certain extent Anime Boston and Otakon would always having all these A-list Japanese guests that come in. And as an anime fan, like I like to meet my favorite creators. I like to meet my favorite creative people behind the anime, and limiting like a lot of guests.
There's no way cons look the same. Whatever cons are trying to hold out for the rest of this year are foolish, flat out. But like at the same time, like everybody's bringing up like amazing points, and at the same time, any con that decides to half-ass their presentation or their protocols, then there's not enough there's not enough trust or the feel of integrity for anybody to want to go. And then, like Nikki said, if you start limiting things, then everything goes up in value. So, but then you have to think about, just like what Erica was saying, like if guests are not able to come, then there's no draw of even going, because they're not going to want to come because maybe they don't feel comfortable, or maybe just the hassle of flight and commute is not tangible for them. Maybe they can't afford it because everything goes up on that end as well too.
Definitely.
It's a lot that it's just so many unknowns right now.
There are. Johnny, I heard you bring up Disney, and Disney is like starting to open now. Like, what's going on with that?
Florida.
It's open. Yeah.
All of the measures that Nikki was talking about.
Anybody want to go down to Florida?
No, and it's like all the measures that Nikki talked about in both of those bits are things that we're seeing hitting a screaming brick wall at Disney World. Because like we've also, like a lot of us have seen that intro video that was like, wow, this looks like a fully degraded experience when like all the people have masks on and stuff. But then once you see like the stories of like what has started happening since they opened, if Disney World cannot handle the logistics of this, you can't. Because like the sanitizer thingers, they're running out and they're shutting down rides for large amounts of time just to get more hand sanitizer.
Wow.
There was one thing I can't remember, but what they just did, and this is like the New Yorkers here are all gonna like lose their minds if there's any here. I think there's a couple of you, but like they banned walking and eating at the same time in Disney World. Like I'm totally West Coast, but that is flagrantly offensive to me.
Stop,
like,
Stop it.
Absolutely.
But like, honey,
no,
why are you in the happiest place in the world if you cannot like smear the chocolate from your mouth, your like ice cream bar all over your goddamn face while you were walking?
Oh my god!
You almost get stomped by Marita on her dang horse. You know, like it's just not Disney World if you're not eating and walking at the same time, because you're not going to see a dang thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, all those blogs, those vlogs that are like, here's the hacks that you could do at Disney. Just don't sit down to eat. Okay.
Party.
That now, okay.
And not to mention too, for people and depending on your location that are like entering the phase reopening stages, like that's really like dependent on places and establishments who have outside parts to it, restaurants and so on. Can anybody name me a con outside of Disneyland right now that is ran outside?
Oh, like outdoors.
Yeah.
There's a certain Petri dish con that not recommended, but they try.
Well, what? In my hometown, the Calgary Stampede, they canceled it too. You know, it's a huge outdoor rodeo and like kind of state fair type thing that's like huge, attracts like 2 million people a year or something. And they're like, forget it. They just didn't even try.
Yeah, I mean, fairs are outdoors and nothing's happening right now.
Yeah. You just can't. And like, think about the bathrooms. Like, you gotta sanitize that after like how often with all of this? Like, I wouldn't feel safe going to like a public bathroom at this point.
And then you also brought up like the
people don't take showers.
Burning Man.
It's like if you provide hand sanitizers and stuff, we all know people who don't shower at conventions.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's disgusting. They're like walking petri dishes. It's gross. Yeah.
I mean, there's also just
not okay.
I think that I absolutely agree with what Johnny said, is that like, I mean, providing it is one thing, but enforcing it is something entirely different. And like conventions have historically not been able to enforce shit.
Oh,
it was awesome.
You know,
we're here today.
Like,
fascinating to
like
see.
I hate to call them out like this, but they're not real good at the enforcing part of the rules. So
sometimes they're not even good at making the rules. So
there it is.
You know, I feel like that might be a good transition point maybe into the bulk of our topic today, which is based on, you know, how conventions safety and harassment policies and codes of conduct are already failing us. And not just that, but how it extends into the rest of the community. So, you know, maybe we attend conventions, maybe we're more sporadic about it here, but the point is that there are always ways that this community is sort of allowing behaviors to happen that are not cool. And, you know, we're looking to find some solutions for those. But if anybody has anything to share that's along the lines of conventions either not enforcing or not having something like that, or how an online space of a convention kind of screwed you over in some way if they didn't have anybody enforcing, moderating comment sections, I mean, that's huge too.
I got a quick question for Erica, because I forget, I think it was Erica who said you volunteered at con before, or whoever has volunteered at cons before. Okay, so
I have also.
Yeah, you too, Micaiah.
I'll say as an attendee, I view somebody as a volunteer is somebody who obviously is not being paid for the job because it's volunteer, and you're given a small task to uphold, and that's, I would assume, just making sure people show badges and little stuff like that, but not truly an enforcer. So is that correct?
Yes.
So
volunteers fall asleep on the job as well.
I haven't seen that.
Well, I have seen that.
But yeah.
So my thoughts is that if you kind of give volunteer interns that level of work, do they have, is the funding an issue, or is it just the lack of integrity to actually put legitimate staffing to handle something that holds the most emphasis at cons? And no matter what your profession is, up and down the board, safety is your utmost priority. But like, can't nobody right now tell me what does a safety person look like at a con? Because I have no clue. I have nowhere. Like, if anything was to happen, I wouldn't know. And ignorantly say, if something was to happen, the first thing I would think was, well, go to the group on Facebook and write it in there. But that's not really the right way to go, because I really, you know what I'm saying? Like, where do you go? What does it look like? Who does it look like?
Absolutely.
Where is the office? And God knows if the office up on the third floor.
Depends on the con. It's individual cons are all different, especially with the work that I do through the Cosplayer Survivor Support Network. We have a harassment policy report card. I can show you through that website just how many conventions don't even have a harassment policy listed on their website. That is the first place that they should put it, and the first place that they should encourage you to check. And it should also be all over the hallways. What do I do if I'm harassed? What if I do if I don't feel safe? The convention should be responsible for that sort of thing. And from what I've seen so far, it is so varied from convention to convention.
Yeah. Just like quickly button in regards of like plastering harassment
And I
policy.
feel like the community has to be more on top of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. But also I feel like cons should be responsible also, and not just rely on the con goers to be respectful, because it's not just in and like everyone who respects normally everybody else, that should be like a no-brainer. But some people, they're still out there who just take opportunities and stuff like that. But like for example, Anime NYC, one of the that's why I really appreciate them, even though they were first started con, they clearly got a lot of
the community has
from people. And they got a lot of feedback from community, because they put their harassment policy on every single floor at every single zone where they can, to remind us, like, hey, if this happens, like, this is the conduct, like, don't do any of this, otherwise this is harassment. Clearly, as mentioned, we don't know who to report to, whether it's the staffing or not, but is the message there and visible? Yes, which is not just in the front, like, hey, no harassment, all right, good luck, go in there. and stuff like that.
What if staff is the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Just bringing that up out of nowhere. Some cons don't even take that into consideration. Mom, I think you were going to say something earlier. Were you going to interject?
I think there's like a slight delay.
I don't even know if my mic's really working that well. I'm so sorry, guys. But okay. I think yeah, it is, right? But I think that one of the most important things in the community is people also not 100% relying on the convention, because you just have to assume the convention is not 100% with that type of support. Now, if we go to Javits, you look everywhere. Javits has they have police presence, and they have trooper presence inside, and security presence. So that's how it should be in all cons. But you don't have that. You'll have that in smaller cons. You do have what they consider security. So I think people need to educate themselves before going to a con. And the problem is, and we spoke about this yesterday, and I thought that this was a really good segue for it, many people go into cons at a younger age not fully prepared, and I don't want to say ignorant as in you're an idiot, but ignorant in that you haven't been led or guided in the correct way of going into a convention and protecting yourself and not falling prey to the predators that are 100% at every single con. And that's something that we need to recognize. It happens in all ages. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It's happened to me. I was actually physically assaulted at NYCC, and twice in one day. It was it was something that was so shocking to me, and it was something where you wouldn't, like, I was with friends. I'm an older woman, and it happened to me. So what's to stop it from happening to a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 20-year-old? What's to stop it from anyone, right? So I think we need to also prepare ourselves, and almost like we're going into battle. I hate to make it sound like that, but yeah.
I wanted to kind of piggyback on that. I think that a lot of people think that anime cons are very accepting of like LGBTQ plus people, and you see people who are cosplaying different genders than they are, playing with their gender expression. Drag queens, everybody is like, there's a lot of queer folks at anime conventions, but it's like, I've still experienced a lot of transphobia at anime conventions where I think that I would be safer than the real world, Yeah,
and actually, I think we had talked privately about an experience you had with the convention using a dead name for you on your back, correct?
This has actually happened at several cons that I've attended, and this is something that I really wanted to bring up, where cons will put people's legal names on their badges and like print them out. And I've had this happen to me at least at 3 different conventions that I've attended, but the biggest issue I had was at one where I was actually volunteer staff, so we all had our own personalized badges. I had just recently come out. I changed my name on Facebook. I informed everybody, like, hey, my name doesn't match in your listing anymore. This is who I am. This is my legal name. Just, can I make sure that my badge says the right name, everything else. I was assured by multiple people that, some people told me it wasn't the appropriate place to request badge name changes and everything else. I don't know. I was being pulled around. And then I had several people who were like, oh, I'll fight for you to make sure that this is taken care of, this, that, and the other. And so many people promised me that it was done. And I was like, okay, this is fine. I get to the con and I look at my badge that's printed and it has my dead name on it, not my name that I requested several times and had to out myself publicly on the staff page about. And thankfully they had a label printer and were able to print a new label for me that had the corrected name on it. But it was still this shouldn't have happened. I told you on several occasions, and I shouldn't have had to out myself. They were like, we only do badge name changes for people with legal names if they're transgender, or if this is an identity consideration, if somebody's afraid of their identity being out there. And I had to literally say, I am transgender, please change my name, and they still didn't do it.
That's ridiculous. I mean, really. And that is, different from con to con, but the fact that that happened to you at 3 separate conventions is really yikes. I mean, I get that, ghosting is a problem, keeping an attendance cap can be a problem, but if you have to have your legal name, that is also a problem for many people, not just trans people, but all kinds of people. It can
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's even if I wasn't trans, I still wouldn't be 100% comfortable having my full legal name on my badge, because it's if people are taking pictures of me as a cosplayer, and it's I don't want that attached to me. I don't want someone to take a picture of me dressed up as a cute anime boy or whatever, and then have my legal name so that they can, look me up on Facebook, find out where I work and stalk me. That's just a huge safety concern.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Stalking is a huge concern.
I think that the issue is that kind of echo what Micaiah is saying, is that for cisgendered people, it's a lot more. I mean, it's something that we have to struggle with to kind of commit to memory, like the proper pronouns, the proper names of trans folk. And some do their due diligence, like they'll say like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I misgendered you, obviously, like that's very hurtful to you, I'll do better next time. But for some people it's just sort of like, oh, whatever, it's fine, like just be less sensitive about it, like hi, and like a lot of them just don't take it seriously enough. Like it's kind of a pervasive problem. It's not just at conventions, it's kind of a major issue everywhere. And I mean, in my day job, I find it kind of heartwarming and sad anytime I'm like in a classroom and I'm like, hey, like I just want to make sure you like clarify your pronouns to me, to a student, and they'll be like, oh, that nobody's ever asked me that, that's so nice. I'm like, what do you mean? Like that's kind of like one of the first things that you should be asking, so anyway.
Well, and the whole thing is like conventions can lead culture, okay, like they fully can. And Alex is correct that this is a much wider societal issue, and these interactions happen in all kinds of professional and non-professional environments. But like obviously, as Micaiah said, there's a lot of trans participation in cosplay and conventions. Like I wrote a piece for Playboy like in about like 2015 about trans participation in conventions. And there's a couple documentaries out specifically about this that you can see. I got to see one at a queer film festival here that was really cool. And it was like they didn't set out to make a documentary about trans cosplayers. It just turned out that by the time they were halfway through this documentary, the vast majority of their participants had come out as trans or non-binary, or had made some kind of a shift in their identification during that entire process, right? And the whole thing, like if you know anything about the ball culture, like not Trixie's, but like
different balls.
Burning, right? The other one, legendary, whatever. And the whole thing is that was a huge point of it, is that it was a liminal space where you could come and try out these things, right? Because you watch Paris is Burning, like 3/4 of the cast are trans women, right? And there were a lot of trans men in that scene, and there's a much harder to find documentary about them in that scene too. But the whole thing is everybody knew this was a safe space in an extremely marginalized community where you could come in, you could try those things out, and then of course you have to get changed to get home, right? And there's a whole line in that documentary where it's like, if you can make it home in your wig and heels and all that, and there's no blood on you when you get home, then like, honey, you've made it, you pass, right? And it's not always that brutal, right? Obviously, because that was like the 1980s in New York. But the whole point of it is that conventions are a major social liminal space where the regular rules of society are suspended. And a lot of those are around gender, around crossplay is one term. I don't know if anybody actually uses that anymore. I've only heard it.
Phasing out.
I hate that word personally.
Yeah, I kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, I think like no. I think like personally, I think like the word crossplay is hard for me specifically as a trans man, because crossplay is typically used for a cisgendered female cosplayer cosplaying men, and it's like if I want to cosplay anime boys, people think that I'm crossplaying and I'm not actually a man. And and I will say that I think that cosplaying boys helped me figure out my gender and made me realize like I'm presenting masculine. I like this. This makes me feel so much more comfortable, and that's how I was able to like come out, like experimenting with my gender with cosplay. And I'd love to like delve more into that. And I think I would love to read your article about transgender participation in conventions, because there definitely is a huge thing, cosplay and stuff. It does give us a safe space to explore with our gender, where we don't necessarily like, I can pretend to be a boy for a little while and then, oh, guess what? I actually like it,
Yeah.
I'm a trans woman drag queen, so like everything you said about your relationship to the term crossplay is like, I have full, complete solidarity and empathy for you, because like I'm a trans woman who also dresses up as like a bigger, more cartoonier woman, right? Steven Universe style or whatever, like the large woman. So yeah, no, I fully am on board with that. And it's like, we need to protect and we need to expand these liminal spaces, and we need to create these liminal spaces intentionally so that when you come in to test out a new identity, we can give you the framework to take that new identity back out into the world safely. And like, this is a brutal, hard example, but it's true, is that like when I wrote a comic for Love is Love to commemorate the Pulse shooting, that was what our comic was. It was about trans people coming to gay clubs, this open, safe environment, this dang nightclub in Central Florida without a metal detector, because that's the kind of community that they are. That's how trusting and loving and welcoming they are. They don't have a metal detector at the club, right? And so they maintain these spaces to be open in that way, because you can come in like you come in a convention, test these things out and test the limits of it, and they're there to make it safer for you to take that out into the real world. And so that was what was under attack when that guy did what he did, right? And it's so I think we do have to understand the transference, right? That like conventions for LGBT people, and particularly for the trans community, and I want to be as expansive as possible when I say the trans community. I mean people who are non-binary, agender, you know, anything along the gender non-conforming spectrum. We have to champion that, to say, come here as whoever you want to be. And it's like, yeah, you could get misgendered and whatnot, but it's also the opportunity. If I don't really have to do many problems with that kind of thing anymore, but it's just kind of like, if I walk onto the convention floor and this is what I'm wearing, you know, unless you're a complete asshole, you're not going to say, check him out, right? Because here's the thing, like when I was in San Diego in 2006, I had the crummiest Spider Jerusalem cosplay, and it's probably great that most of you probably don't know who that is, because it'd be super embarrassing to picture that right now. And you're like, oh, that's what the spider on her arm is. It's not actually Spider-Man, it's from that dang comic. But like, I was there running around the convention, bald with the thing on my head and these stupid glasses. But like people, they would just see me go by and they would yell spider. And I could go like this, because that's the kind of stuff that he would do. And I could yell swears sometimes. I'd be careful about it. But it's just,
I'll be right back, guys.
That mutual understanding that you're a pretend character, and they're going to meet you as a pretend character. Like, I met the guy who drew that comic at that convention, and I interviewed him. We went around the whole convention. And of course, this is before I was out, so mind the pronouns, right? But we were going around the convention together, and anytime he'd stop at a booth, I created him. And I'd be like, yeah, right? So it's such a suspension of disbelief welded into the culture that just kind of congealed onto it, that we can now take and say, this is a value that we are going to defend. And that means pronouns on cards. That means, what do you call those places where you can pee and they don't care what your parts are?
All gender restrooms.
Yeah, gender neutral restrooms.
Gender neutral, yeah.
Those things, that kind of stuff, right? Like we can say, hey, like, these are the values of our community, and obviously that's going to be a big culture war fight, because we all know what kind of people also lurk in our communities. But it's like, if we carry that as a manifesto into the world and say, yes, we want to make this a liminal space.
Yeah.
Because you can take more than just con crud, right?
What I never understood is that I can say most of us have come from beginnings of liking what we like, and we've either been teased or bullied about it. And so growing up knowing that there was cons was like, oh, there's a place where I can identify with other people who like the same thing I like. And it was supposed to be freedom, it's supposed to be family friendly, and you're supposed to either inspire to want to be the character you want to be, or you can actually see somebody the character you want to be. And I just never understood, the older I got, why people started trying to put rules on things that never needed rules, where it's like, you know, one thing I can truly speak on is like when a black cosplayer cosplays as a character, they're always known as a black cosplayer of that character. Why can't they just be that character? And then when people that, I think you said crossplay, I've never heard of that term, but that's cringy to hear, because if you want to cosplay as a character, damn sure if you put in all that work for doing it, nobody should be able to tell you what you can and can't do. And I'll say this right now, the baddest Jubilee cosplay is sitting 2 under me right now, and I don't give a damn about that. And that's how we became friends, because if you want the essence of a cosplay, then you do it. But it's just so weird to think that all of us really came from a place where we wanted a place to express our like or our gratitude for characters, and now people are trying to put rules on it, saying who can and cannot do certain things, and it's just really ugly. It should never have came to that.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I just wanted to be someplace that was
really distressing to see that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to be like someplace that wasn't as Nazi riddled as Lindy Hop.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing.
That's a whole separate conversation, but
but like here we are though, right? Like I mean we maybe don't have Nazis, but we have other problems and we kind of have to deal with them.
In comics we do have Nazis, so
I mean,
I think we do have slightly fewer.
I'd like to make a comment as far as like.
Yeah, I mean, like in the end of the day, we all nerds, fans of things that like to dress up, whatever is everyone's hobbies. It's like we're all, in the end of the day, we're all kind of on the same page. So why is there a thing where there something isn't correct because we're all doing the same thing differently?
Right. Mom, what was your point?
So I teach middle and high school kids, and I run 2 anime clubs for middle and high school separately. That's awesome. Thank you. And my kids are awesome. And growing up in the South Bronx and growing up in predominantly Puerto Rican, African American neighborhoods and stuff, these are the students that I've always taught, because I've always chosen to be in districts where with predominant with minority students, and it makes me happy. And I had some of my students tell me, oh, I would love to cosplay, but I'm not the right color. And we've had these conversations before, and we've taught students that, there is no rule as far as colorism, or if you wanted, I had one student, African-American student, who cosplayed Joker. Not DC Joker from anime. Oh, and I don't
Persona
watch the
5.
anime. That's Persona 5.
Persona 5.
Yes, the video game. I've never played the game, and he was like, "I'm gonna be Joker," and I thought, "Oh, like Batman," and he's like, "Ew, no." Sorry, but he did it.
Drag him.
And I know, and he did it. He went and he did it, and he went to NYCC, and he had a great time. But what distresses me is, number one, we have to change the rhetoric. We have to change the mindset of what you should or shouldn't cosplay. And then when I see amazing cosplayers cosplaying characters who aren't traditionally Hispanic or traditionally African American, traditionally whatever they are, where I see the comments by people of all backgrounds saying, you're not the right color, from all backgrounds, it really pisses me off, because this is not what this community is about. It's a really shitty thing to do to people. It is none of your business what someone chooses to cosplay or who they choose to represent or reflect or mirror. And it's toxic. It's a toxic idea that runs across, the entire community, and it's wrong. People should cosplay whatever the hell they want to cosplay.
Absolutely. And
regardless of skin color or race or gender.
Unless you're like me toned and you're trying to cosplay an African American, don't do that.
No blackface. Done.
Yeah, please don't.
No black. That's not cosplay. That's nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely racist bullshit.
I also want to jump in.
That's not the same.
Sure.
So I mean, like, that is something that I guess I implicitly have that mindset of. So most of my cosplay is all Asian characters. I don't nobody said anything to me about oh, why are you always doing Asian characters? That's just but I also feel like that's another side of this issue is there's not as many BIPOC characters in general.
Absolutely.
People are thinking white skin characters are the norm, the regular, and then you are just Asian Spider-Man, you're just Black Spider-Man, or it's just it's just I feel like in addition to feeling like you can just be colorblind in cosplaying, there needs to be like just more characters that's like just resemble all of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just add the industry.
Yeah, and
the visibility of cosplayers can be a big thing to fill that, not show that gap, but to demonstrate to the license holders, to the creators of these things, that all those folks are out there, right? You know,
it's pretty powerful.
Because they always say, like, especially in comics and like sales data, I don't even want to get into how complex that is. But there's always this thing, well, we don't know who's reading. We don't know what the gender breakdown is. We don't know what the racial breakdown is. And there are weird structural problems to the direct market that like make that opaque, and it would be on retailers to do that, blah, 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 whatever. So it's always like, well, we don't really know what the visible things are. Social media is changing that in a big way, just in general, because like you could host a hashtag where it's like, hey, you know, if you're Black and you're reading comic books, take a selfie today. And it promotes the visibility. And so it says to those corporate people like, oh, hey, check out all these kids, because they're reading Green Lantern. And it's like, when I think it was Judd Winnick came around, he said, okay, well, you know, Green Lantern, like Kyle Rayner, where he's going to discover that he's actually like his dad was Mexican. He has Mexican heritage that he didn't know about. So boom, there you go. Right. And they have like new legacy characters. But I think really cosplayers being out there, and like you shouldn't have to deal with the brunt of like, why are you Black Wolverine and like stupid bullshit like that? Like obviously, you know. But if you're stepping outside of that and you're race bending these characters, then I think that does a lot to increase the visibility and say there are these people in these spaces disrupting it, and hopefully that pushes forward the willingness of these companies to commission that work from the people who have these backgrounds to create these characters like America Chavez, right? Or Robbie Reyes, or Miles Oscar-winning Morales.
Yes. Right. And actually, I'm gonna stop you there just because we are sort of running into a time limit here. But we have had actually a fantastic transition from, you know, talking about what makes you feel unsafe at cons to some solutions, such as, you know, not making your legal name required, you know, not moderated comment sections where people where Black cosplayers are cosplaying so that they don't get called Black whatever it is all the time. Moderate, and you know, when younger people are introduced in the convention scene, making sure that they are also protected. So any quick last thoughts that we have on ways to improve our conventions and our communities in general? Just anything very quick you can think of that we haven't touched upon?
Yeah, look, an easy solution for badges is that you need to go something digital. If it's not a QR code or something that's on your cell phone, maybe wristbands with proxy sensors. That way you take away the whole name, but more importantly, you take away the idea of something physical to touch and the idea of social distancing and what may be the worst part with COVID in play right now. So I think that's a good, easy way and I know it's going to cost the conventions more money, but you got to do it because it will make everybody feel safe. Give everybody a wristband, let them run the wand. If they ping it, it's active, you're good to go. And that's just the easy, simple way. It doesn't hinder nobody's cosplay. It's not something that you have to worry about losing because it's on your wrist. It's very easy.
Right.
So,
Alex, do you have a point?
Yeah, just kind of like very quickly
Sure.
to piggyback off of the previous thing we talked about, which is like, you know, Asian version of like this character or whatever. So I think the bigger problem is that it's not so much a convention issue, it's a popular culture issue, which is like deeply colonized, and we kind of need to like start working towards decolonizing it, because the default
anti-racism
in popular media, there's a default, and that default, of course, is the cishet white male or female. And so these things definitely need to, like, we actually, like, one of the things that we can do as sort of like purveyors of popular culture and somebody like connoisseurs of popular culture is bring forward these voices, like bring forward more trans voices, Black voices, Asian voices in like fiction and media. We don't necessarily need to like default to like the J.K. Rowling gold standard for all of this shit, right? We need to like, I mean, I feel like it's kind of incumbent on us to actually make this a more visible aspect of popular culture, and therefore making it more acceptable than it is right now.
Yeah, okay. Any further thoughts?
I would like to also need
up security
to like, pardon? Sorry, did you say something?
You're cutting out a little bit.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Who's talking? Me? Who?
Go ahead. Go. Well, okay,
No,
hold
I
on.
said beef up security.
And I can talk about that a little bit in the resources section. Ari, what were you going to say?
Oh, just kind of transitioning from talking about racism, anti-racism, to just my final thoughts.
Sure.
I wanted to touch up a bit about colorism and just my personal experience with it, because I just posted a blog article about, like, yes, brown Asians exist. I am tired of this preference towards Far East Asian looking cosplayers and photographers, because there have been many times when I've been at a photo shoot and a photographer will not get sold to me because there is a preferred aesthetic, and that's annoying and that's hurtful. And as part of the solution, I'd like to start promoting photographers who are inclusive, who do shoot people who are plus size, who shoot people of all nationalities, gender identity, etc. Because I'm just tired of, like, a certain aesthetic being promoted and pushed out in the cosplay world, and these are. And I just want to, like, just support. We should just be supporting the following and just empowering, like, these photographers who are very inclusive. Because personally, I just had it to my wits end dealing with colorism as a brown Asian. I know I don't look brown on camera because been inside, kind of
lighting. It's fine.
But that's like another job. If your job is a photographer, you should know how to photograph everybody, not just a particular type. That's
right. Definitely.
And as a cosplayer, I feel like as a cosplayer, it's also like your prerogative to look at the photographer you're about to work with and make the decision. Like, oh, is this a person who, like, actually knows how to photograph darker skinned subject, or is he just sticking exclusively to hetero white women that he eventually wants to bang?
Exactly.
Oh, and I was going to say, and as a community, people need to stop being called photographers just because they own the camera.
Yes, absolutely.
And, like, as a plus size cosplayer, I've definitely had photographer where I felt ignored because I was hanging out with my skinnier friends, you know?
Right.
It's like
awful.
Or I've gotten, like, really bad pictures back from the same photographer that gave really great pictures to, you know, skinny white women.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, these are all so important points. They're just fantastic points to be made. And I really hope that anybody who's watching this can understand how many facets of our community exist and that we can improve all of them. Every single part of the community can stand to be improved in one way. And I hope that you come out of this thinking, you know, oh, maybe I can take this pledge and, you know, put these different opinions and people to light where other opinions have just dominated for decades. So I do want to wrap it up now. Thank you everybody so much for coming. In my closing statements here, I do want to provide some resources. Recently, we've had a lot of disclosures in the community, allegations against various people in positions of power. And that goes all across the board, comics, in gaming recently, the FGC, all of that sort of thing. It's really, really important for us to support survivors and believe them. One website that stood out to me recently was SoManyOfUs.com. The victims of Warren Ellis came together and put together some incredible resources. If you only look at their resource page, you will be reading for days. It's fantastic. It has just about everything that you can think of. Another great resource is RAINN, which is your traditional rape and incest support network, and then also 1in6.org for male survivors specifically, because that is the statistic, 1 in 6 for the likelihood of being sexually assaulted in your life, and it's very stigmatized. Also with that, mental health resources are so important right now. Our country is going through a pandemic, a social revolution, and all of the rest of this. So real quick, just those resources are blackmentalhealthmatters.card.co, CARRD. And then, of course, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline.org, as well as the number 1-800-273-8255. Okay. So, Nigeria, did you have something to say?
No, I think that's really good. This information will be in the description. We definitely have a lot more that we want to cover for the time's sake of this part one. I just think that hopefully this sparks conversations amongst the viewers, because I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little fire lit under all of us right now because there's so many different things we can talk about. And it's just because everybody's passionate. Everybody wants to come together in solidarity in love and just an appreciation for this nerd culture. All of us, you know, we're here for one reason for sure, and that's because we love these things that we kind of grew up on and kind of never let it go. And we're realizing now that as adults, like, there's a lot of wrong in these spaces, and you know, we're just here to kind of talk about this. And as you can see across the board here, we all come from different walks of life, and we just all want one thing, and that's just better. So hopefully, you know, if you're watching this, you took something from this, and obviously you have to come back for part 2, because we'll definitely have some more to talk about.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.